Welcome to draft season presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. Hello, everybody. Welcome to draft season. John Schmeelk, joined as always by Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda as we continue to get you ready for the NFL draft. Tony, fun weekend of playoff NFL football, fun Thursday and Friday night of college football. We're recording this on Monday, so we don't know the result of the Monday night game yet, but I'm not sure we've ever had 5 straight days of high quality football games like this before. And frankly, in my lifetime, it's pretty cool. I could sign up for this. This is nice.
Yeah, I'm going to talk primarily about the college games because I watched a lot of film. I was in and out of the NFL games, but exciting games and really some great and not so great performances by guys that we're going to be talking about for the next couple of months in the lead up to the 2025 draft. And besides those games, some pretty impactful news off after those games or outside of those games as far as the NFL draft is concerned.
So why don't we start with the news first, Tony? Do you want to go there first? That works for you. We heard some guys coming in, some guys not going in. Why don't you go through the guys that caught your eye?
Well, obviously, the first one would be Carson Beck, who said he was going to enter the draft. We both thought it was a bad mistake. Carson Beck goes back in the transfer portal. He's announced that he's transferring to Miami. I'm told there's also an NIL deal there, which is worth about $10 million, which enticed him to go to Miami. But regardless of what the money is, it's a good decision for Carson Beck because, as we both said, Carson Beck entering the draft after the season he had in 2024, after the elbow injury, the UCL surgery, would have been the worst possible move he could make. He now goes to Miami. He's going to get another year under his belt, another year to kind of redeem himself after what was a disappointed 2024 season. And when you think about it, I mean, not only is this the same avenue, the same road that Cam Ward took, but when you look at your highest rated quarterback, your quarterbacks who are really moving up draft boards, your quarterbacks who improve their draft stock more than anyone else in the 2024 season. You talk about Cam Ward, obviously, transferring from Washington State to Miami. You talk about Kyle McCord, who transferred from Ohio State to Syracuse. You're probably going to talk about Curtis Rourke, even though he's injured, who transferred from Ohio to Indiana. You may want to throw Will Howard into that mix. He's definitely improved his draft stock, transferred from Kansas State to Ohio State. Riley Leonard is probably going to, has a higher draft grade now after his transfer to Notre Dame from Duke. So, I mean, there is something to that. Sometimes the grass can be greener. I think it's a great move by Beck. Obviously, his savings account, his checking account is going to agree. But it's a chance for him to redeem himself, and he should be applauded for it.
Now, Tony, Craig, I didn't see anything official. I know before the game he said he was coming out regardless. Has Quinn Ewers made official that he's coming out yet or not yet? I have not seen anything.
I have not seen that, and my information in the lead up was that he was going to enter the draft. So I think at this point in time, I think it would be a bigger surprise if he goes back to school, goes back to Texas, or transfers to another school rather than entering the draft. I was of the thought process and the information was he was going to enter the draft. And we'll get into this when we get into that game, the only official announcement that we've gotten out of Texas, right, literally up until the minute we started this podcast, was Kelvin Banks, the offensive tackle, and Jaden Blue, the running back.
And we'll see if Kelvin Banks is offensive tackle or offensive guard based on how the draft goes as well. And I know we talked about this last week, but Eli Stowers, I believe, made it official. He will be going back to Vanderbilt, correct?
I mean, that's the way it looks. Another big NIL deal. And one guy that announced that he is going into the draft, no surprise there, Abdul Carter out of Penn State, who's going to be a very early pick. I had reported this back when they played USC. He was hanging out with his agent after the game. Not a surprise. Abdul Carter, we'll talk about his game against Notre Dame. Going to be a very early pick, an impactful defensive front seven player.
All right, so let's get to that game then, Tony. Notre Dame and Penn State. I think you have to classify as an upset. Notre Dame figuring out a way to come out with a win in that game. Do you want to start with Notre Dame or Penn State? Where do you want to go?
Let's go with the winners first. Get to the winners, go to the spoils.
Yeah, and look, I don't know if we're going to have I know we're not going to have a round one pick out of Notre. Well, maybe
No,
Morrison, the cornerback, maybe.
right.
You know,
Well, there was no round. There was no round one pick from Notre Dame that was on the field
that was
Thursday night.
playing in the
Let's put it
game.
that way.
Good point. So why don't we start, I guess, with the quarterback? You know, Riley
Right.
Leonard's coming out. We're going to see him down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl.
Yep.
And look, he's been doing what's been asked of him since his really struggles early season that we talked about here, where, you know, he's not going to wow you. He's not going to be a first round pick. He's not going to be a second round pick. But he's a guy that makes the plays, especially on the ground when you need him. He was vital in those third and fourth and short situations in the game. And he continues to do what Notre Dame needs offensively to score just enough points to win a lot of these low scoring games.
I would agree with you. I would not grade him as a second round pick.
Oh, I
But
didn't say
here's
that.
why.
I said he's not going to be a one. He's not going to be a two.
Right. I would
Right.
agree. I would agree with you. He's not
Yeah.
going to be a second round pick or a first round pick. But here's the reason why he could be a second round pick, because we know he's got the athleticism. We know he's got the arm talent. We know he's got a lot of ability. And he's shown throughout this college football playoffs what a leader he is, that he's efficient. He does what's necessary to win, and he just may need some coaching. So, if he goes into the Senior Bowl and has a good Senior Bowl week, and the Senior Bowl is becoming as important for the interviews, and he wows some team with his interviews, they're like, yeah, we know why Notre Dame, beat Georgia when they weren't supposed to, and beat Penn State when they weren't supposed to, because this guy is the leader. This is the guy we want leading our team. I think there's a chance he could sneak into the late part of round two. I wouldn't do it. But again, the quarterback position, as we see, is always one that's overdrafted. And he was efficient. He moved the ball. He did what was necessary. And again, he won a game, or he helped his team win a game that they weren't expected to win. And he's got the physical ability. And as we've said all along, he's looked more like an athlete who needs to be a passer. And now you throw in those leadership intangibles that Notre Dame, and he has shown really since that Northern Illinois loss. And I think that's why there's an outside chance he could squeeze into the late part of round two.
All right, I'm going to Mitchell Evans because he was a guy that was one of the, his prime targets. Big guy. I mean, if you want to, inline, wide tight end, big guy, good hands. We'll see about the athletic testing and all that stuff. But if you're looking for a two-way blocking tight end that can play in line for you, Mitchell Evans, I think, is going to be a real safe draft pick for you.
Prototypical Notre Dame tight end. I mean, a throwback, a guy that you would draft in the mid rounds in the 80s, and he could be your number one tight end. On third down and 3, you're going to either use him as an inline blocker, or you're going to send him on a 4-yard pattern and he's going to catch the ball. I mean, as you said, a big guy. He catches the ball in the crowd, he takes a pounding, and he holds on to the throw. I don't expect any great testing numbers from Mitchell Evans, but, he projects very well as a very nice number 2 tight end at the next level who can catch the ball or who can block.
All right, let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball, Tony. Who on Notre Dame jumped out at you?
Jack Kaiser doesn't get a lot of notice. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. But you watch him the past 3 years, and you watch him against Penn State. He's smart. He's tough. He's instinctive. He makes outstanding plays time after time with his head, efficient, takes good angles to the action. If he gets drafted, it will be in the very late rounds. But Kaiser's one of those guys that, you want him as your 7th or 8th linebacker who can also play special teams just because of his ability to diagnose and read what's happening on the field. And I thought, again, Xavier Watts had another solid game, more so against the run, which Penn State was very good at, than the pass. But he's a well-rounded safety who I don't know that he's a top 100 pick, but I can absolutely see him coming off the board quickly when the day 3 of the draft begins.
All right, let's jump over to Penn State here, Tony. And, we know the internet can get out of control. And there were some people thinking, oh, if he beats Notre Dame, has a really good game in the national title game, Drew Aller, maybe you can jump into the top 10. And I know you and I had talked about him a lot on this show over the course of this year. And we're like, guys, we don't even think he's ready to come out yet. Like, you look at his numbers every week. Yeah, you might like the toolbox, but he's just extremely inconsistent. The completion percentage is never high. It's not like Penn State's scoring a million points because they're throwing the ball a lot. And, we just saw a very rough game, to be
Yeah.
totally honest, Tony. Not a lot of great throws, a lot of inconsistency, bad decision making. So he's going to go back to school. We'll see if it's at Penn State or not. That's a decision he can make too. The transfer portal is open. So we'll see. But obviously, I think Drew Aller showed that not ready for the National Football League.
Now, I had actually somebody ask me on Twitter, do you think if Drew Aller plays well, he could be the third pick of the draft? I said, I don't think he's going to be the third pick of the second round. Forget about the third pick of the draft. I mean, I'm going to draw a parallel here. And, I hope he goes back. I looked this morning. I didn't see anything official. I didn't see him, confirm what he said earlier that he's going back, but he needs to go back. There's no doubt about it. And I'm going to draw a parallel here to a guy that people may remember by the name of Christian Hackenberg. And people they say that it's it's ridiculous and I'm being overly dramatic. But the fact is, Drew Aller, like Christian Hackenberg, was phenomenal as a freshman. He was a freshman phenom, and everyone expected him to be the next great quarterback prospect. And his game slowly either leveled off or regressed, and he never showed that consistent magic that he had as a freshman. And Christian Hackenberg, we know the story, foolishly entered the draft after his junior season, was overdrafted by the Jets in the second round, and amounted to nothing. As far as Aller is concerned, if everyone will talk about that horrible pass, the interception where he threw it across his body, threw it across the field, and that ended Penn State's national title hopes. The red flag for me went up early in the second half. When Penn State had that first drive, he threw a 6-yard pass. They had like a 1 or 2 yard run. It was 3rd and 3, and Penn State seemed to have Notre Dame back on their heels. And the Penn State coaching staff, rather than putting the ball in Allar's hands and letting him throw the ball, they ran the ball, and they didn't get the first. They didn't get the first down. They had to kick the ball back, pump the ball back to Notre Dame, and right then and there, I'm saying, the Penn State coaches don't seem to have the confidence in Drew Aller. They know something's up because of the inconsistency. He's got to go back to school, and I would absolutely agree with you. He's got to consider transferring. I mean, I don't know what the emotional ties are, but he seems very stale at Penn State. And if a guy like Ryan Grubb, quarterback coach with the Seattle Seahawks now, is rumored to be going to Alabama. Ryan Grubb was the quarterback coach, offensive coordinator at Washington, who developed Michael Penix. If he goes back to Alabama with DeBoer, to reunite with him, as is being rumored. I mean, that is a place where a lot of quarterbacks will want to go, potentially go, especially like Drew Aller, to have Grubb develop his game. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what we saw literally the past 2 years with Drew Aller. He was spectacular at points, but overall, there was inconsistency and some bad play. He's got to go back. It may be to his benefit to find a new home. Because as we talked about, Cam Ward, Kyle McCord, Will Howard, Curtis Rourke, these are all guys that benefited from a change in scenery.
Yeah, and Tony, I'm with you. And he'll be losing his top target too, right? Tyler Warren's going to come out the tight end, had another strong game, 6 catches, 75 yards. I've seen the TJ Hawkinson comparison thrown out there. I think that's probably pretty good in terms of his level of athleticism, his size and things of that nature. But Warren, I think, closed his college career very strongly with another good performance, showing off his size, strength, and just kind of the physical force that he plays with, which is pretty impressive.
And Tyler Warren, a guy that went back for an extra senior season because, there were thoughts that he was going to enter last year's draft and be a 4th-round pick. Now he's going to enter this year's draft and be a 1st-round pick. And he's answered the call every time Penn State has relied on him or needed him to answer the call, unlike Drew Aller. I think as far as his draft stock is concerned, I still have Colston Loveland rated as my number 1 tight end. I want to see those testing numbers. Hawkinson turned in some pretty decent testing numbers. I don't know that Warren's going to be as fast as Hawkinson, although he does a few other things better. But still, the tight end position, you want your guy at that spot to be able to get down the field and create mismatches. I am not sold yet that Warren can do that on Sunday.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that's something to keep an eye on. Just for reference, I will bring up TJ Hawkinson's combine number just so fans have an idea of what they were. At the combine, he ended up running a 4.7 40-yard dash, 1.59 10-yard split, 37.5 vert, which is very good for a man his size, and a 10.3 broad, 7.02 3 cone. So I could see Warren being in the neighborhood of some of those. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I think he's more a 4.75 guy. But then again, you know, you never know. These guys train for the combine. Who thought Michael Mayer? We talk about the Notre Dame tight ends. I mean, Michael Mayer ran much, much faster than anybody thought. Listen, wherever he goes in the draft, a creative offensive coordinator is going to find a spot for Tyler Warren to be very productive on Sunday. And he went back to for another senior season, and it's worked out for him. So credit to Tyler Warren.
Yeah, Penn State running game, I thought did a nice job, Tony.
Yeah.
Nicholas Singleton, 15 carries, 84 yards, 3 touchdowns. Katron Allen, 19 carries, 82 yards. And they really kept that Penn State team in the game by running it on Notre Dame against a pretty good front.
They did. In fact, you know, on that first series, it was Drew Alar who missed that screen pass to Nick Singleton, and Penn State had to settle for a field goal rather than a touchdown. Rather than leading Singleton with the pass, he kind of threw it behind him, and Singleton was not able to adjust backwards enough to catch the ball. But, you know, they work well together. Singleton is the speedy, creative, explosive back. Katron Allen is the guy who runs through defenders. I think they're both going to be good NFL pros. I think both of them project as top 125 selections.
All right, let's go to the defensive side of the ball, Tony. Who jumped out for Penn State other than Abdul Carter, who hit last year?
And two guys who've played well throughout the college football players. Danny Sutton, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Had a great play in coverage, if you remember. They ran a zone blitz. They dropped them off the line of scrimmage, a drop back 10 yards, deflected a pass from Riley Leonard. I mean, this is a guy, he's an underclassman, a lot of athleticism, natural pass rusher. Abdul Carter also had a good game, and Abdul Carter gets all the headlines and sucks all the oxygen out of the room when you're talking about pass rushers from Penn State. But Danny Sutton, who could be a third-round pick, I think has played better. He played well all year, but he's really stepped up his game during the college football playoffs. And again, Keziah Izzard, the defensive tackle, the quick, explosive defensive tackle, 6 sacks, one sack, 1 tackle for loss. This was a guy who I had him on my radar. I always thought he was PFA late-round type. He was graded as a reject by scouts coming in, which means he's basically a street free agent. 6'3", 306 pounds, runs in the 4.9s, a one-gap, 3 technique type of tackle who I think from this his play during the season and especially his play in the postseason is going to change a lot of opinions if he decides to enter the draft. Fourth-year senior who could go back for another year.
All right. Let's go over to Abdul Carter here, Tony. 5 tackles, 3 solo, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. But, man, they could not block him off the edge.
Yeah.
I know Notre Dame suffered some injuries on the offensive line over the course of the game, and that hurt them. But they could not block Abdul Carter. His just ability to get off the line quickly, his get off, his ability to get to the edge, that little dip and rip move that he has, he just used it again and again. His athletic ceiling is so high, I would be shocked today if he's not a top 5 pick in the draft.
And he did it all with one arm, if you remember, because it was his left shoulder, and they had to put him on the other side of the line to protect that shoulder that was injured, and he still was unstoppable. And, you know, people talk about the pass rushing numbers, and if you watch this show, I think with Abdul Carter, there's more to his game than that. You can drop him off the line of scrimmage. I talk about the play that Dennis Sutton made in coverage. You can do that with Abdul Carter all day if you want to as a 3-4 stand-up linebacker. If you need to play him over the tight end in coverage and drop him into space, he's shown in the past to be very effective at Penn State. He's shown himself to be a 3-down defender who can play in space. Obviously, putting him at defensive end this year was more to the team's benefit, going to help his draft stock. He was always a highly rated player. I mean, coming into the season, scouts graded him as a potential top 5 pick, as one of the highest rated players in the nation for those scouts or those scouting services who graded underclassmen. So it's no surprise. I just think that whoever drafts Abdul Carter has got to be creative with him. Don't just use him as a pass rusher. Use him in a variety of ways because he is talented and multiversatile.
Yep, I'm with you. Really good. And they'll be taking on Ohio State, who defeated Texas. in their game. I believe that was the Cotton Bowl, right? Yeah, 28-14. Ohio State beat Texas in this game. And Tony, this was really a case of, Ohio State, I wouldn't consider them dominant in this game. They didn't dominate from start to finish, but you kind of always felt like they had a control of the game. Uh, let's start with Ohio State's defense, because I thought they did a pretty good job controlling Texas, especially on the ground, where Texas has had success running the ball behind their big offensive line this year. But I thought Ohio State's defense did really well against the run, starting with Jack Sawyer.
As they have all season. And I mean, the thing about Jack Sawyer is everyone's going to talk about that scoop and score play forever. And, it will go down in Ohio State football lore. But people need to go back and watch that third down play before the fourth down scoop and score. Because on that third down play, what happened was they lined Jack Sawyer inside almost as like a defensive tackle position. He beat the guard, penetrated the line of scrimmage, and deflected Quinn Ewers' pass. Now, that was important because Igbinosun would have gotten called for pass interference
Yep.
in the corner of the end zone. And if Sawyer had not tipped that pass, not penetrated the line of scrimmage, not beaten the offensive guard, pass interference is called. Texas now has 4 more downs inside the 1-yard line. So everyone's going to talk about the scoop and score. It was a great play. It was a great highlight. Go back and watch that third down play and see what Jack Sawyer did on that third down play, which really set up that fourth down play. And the bottom line is this, I'm going to talk about Tyleik Williams. We talked about, I think it was with Dane Brugler, about how the college football playoffs would give guys a chance to elevate their draft stock. I thought that Tyleik Williams has elevated his draft stock more than any other player in the college football playoffs. You got to add Jack Sawyer in there. I mean, he was constant. We're going to talk about Cam Williams, but I mean, Cam Williams was no match for Jack Sawyer. He was all over the place.
Yeah, and look, I thought a number of Ohio State players on defense played well. Tony Tyleik Williams, Tuamalu had the injury early in that game. He kind of fought through it, came back and played. Cody Simon, I thought was good. Sonny Styles was all over the place. Just you saw that Ohio State front really play to the back of their baseball cards.
And with Tyleik Williams, the stats aren't there. 4 tackles. I think he had 1 pass breakup, but continual pressure, continual double teams. And what that does is one of 2 things. Either the running backs have to reroute their runs, change the angle of their runs, or the quarterback has to move out of the pockets, or it's creating opportunities for his teammates. And I think Tyleik Williams is a big athletic man who, as I've said before, is going to be one of the top 4 defensive tackles in the draft. I think he's elevated stock. I think Tuimoloau, after a rather uninspired season, has really elevated his play. We talked about Cody Simon, really the unsung hero of that Ohio State defense, and a guy who came into the season with late round grades. He's moved into the middle rounds. I mean, he's got good measurables. He could go late day 2 in the 3rd round. Complete linebacker, tough run defender, instinctive, also makes plays in coverage. Really, your sort of forgotten about traditional 3-down linebacker. Here's the thing about Sonny Styles is he's large, he's athletic, he stands out on film. The instincts kind of bother me because he doesn't read and react. He thinks and reacts. And a couple times he was playing catch up with Gunnar Helm, and he's more athletic than Gunnar Helm because he was reacting a little bit late. That's something that, could be kind of tricky trying to figure out. Sonny Styles has tremendous amount of upside potential, and he can be an outstanding player. And just, another guy in that Ohio State defensive front 7 that is going to be playing Sunday football real soon.
And you mentioned earlier a potential defensive pass interference penalty in the defensive backfield for Ohio State. That's been a problem for them all year. I thought their young safety, who's probably coming out next year, the year after, I thought he looked very good, but the corner struggled again.
Corner struggled, and so did Ransom. Ransom had that terrible pass interference call late in the game that actually moved the ball down into the 2-yard line, so it was 2nd and goal. And then it was Caleb Downs who made the play on 2nd down for a 5-yard loss when Texas ran that sort of toss sweep there. And Caleb Downs is going to be just a tremendous pro. I mean, he's going to be a guy that when you see the 2026 mock drafts come out 2 days after the 2025 mock drafts, after the 2025 actual draft is over, Caleb Downs is going to be in everybody's top 10, a top 10 pick in all his mock drafts, and he deserves it. But again, I think after two really good games in the college football playoffs, Igbinosun, Burke, and even Ransom struggled against Texas.
All right, so let's go to the offensive side of the ball now for Ohio State, Tony. And look, they ran the ball, I thought, pretty well in this game, even though the
Yeah.
numbers don't show it. Henderson just 6 carries, 42 yards. Junkins 9 carries, 36 yards. But I felt like they got yards when they needed it in this game.
Yeah.
And then Henderson, of course, had that big screen pass at the end of the first half that went for the 75-yard touchdown, just showing that ability to accelerate quickly, and then the long speed, no one could catch him.
Yeah, which I thought was changed the tempo of the game because Texas found themselves really playing from behind. And you're right, the numbers weren't there for Ohio State, but they were important runs. They were big runs on first down to make it easier in second, third down to get the next first down, or they were big third down runs. I mean, Junkins, you saw why Ohio State went and paid him the big money, if you will, because he is just a violent, explosive ball carrier. He's not going down on first contact. He works his runs. He tries to get as much yardage out of every carry as possible. And then Trayvon Henderson. Listen, I think Trayvon Henderson is an absolute day two pick. We'll see where he goes. He's what the NFL wants. It's sort of like the Nick Singleton, Katron Allen situation in Ohio at Penn State, but I think these guys are more talented. I think Junkins is a little bit better of an outside runner than Katron Allen is. I think Trayvon Henderson is a little bit more explosive and has that game-breaking ability compared to Nick Singleton. I mean, these guys team up and they feed off of each other and they complement each other. And again, I mean, Trayvon Henderson has kind of been pushed in the back, or was pushed in the background through most of the regular season. I know he's had injuries. I know, he's had a tough time of it, but man, what a story. And, if he gets a clean bill of health at the combine, I just think he's going to be an extraordinary pro as a situational runner on Sunday.
It was pretty obvious Texas was going to take Jeremiah Smith out of this game for Ohio State, Tony. They're going to make somebody else beat them. Carnell Tate did a good job. And Emeka Egbuka, again, 5 catches, 51 yards. They go to him on important plays on third downs, things like that. He's just very reliable. He'll do everything you want. He's a good route runner, even if he's not spectacular. I wonder, just because of the nature of this draft class and the lack of first-round grades, he might end up sneaking into the first round this year because he's so safe and so reliable. But I don't see him as being like a potential Pro Bowler, but I see him being a 10 to 12-year NFL starter, easy.
Solid, consistent, very polished. I don't have a first round grade on him, and I struggle to put him in a first round in a mock draft unless somehow he blows me away with the testing. And here's why: is because last year I thought Egbuka, who played second fiddle to Marvin Harrison, was potentially a first round pick, but I didn't see a lot of improvement in his game this year. Again, he was playing second fiddle to a freshman receiver this year rather than really stepping up his game. Doesn't mean he's not a good receiver. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good NFL pro. Like you said, he's very consistent. He's polished. He does the little things well. He comes up big for Ohio State when they need him. Let's see what the testing numbers are. I still struggle to see Egbuka as a first-round pick, but I think he's going to be a very good NFL pass catcher.
All right, how about Will Howard, Tony? This is a guy that whenever a team leads, a player at quarterback leads a team to a potential national championship, and we'll talk about that championship game at the end of the program, he's going to, go up in regard in most people's eyes. How do you think Will Howard has handled some of these really important situations? And his numbers in this game were great: 24-33, 289 yards, a touchdown. Only 4 rushing yards on 7 carries. Now, remember, they count sacks and like the minus for rushing yards in college, so that number's a little bit skewed. But he had a couple important runs in this game, too, for them. How do you think scouts are viewing Howard as he continues to lead Ohio State through these college football playoffs?
He's sort of a poor man's. Well, I don't want to say that. He's got the physical skills. I mean, you see the arm strength, the arm talent is there. He drives those deep passes with speed. He gets the ball through the tight spots. He makes some really big passes, but he also makes a lot of dangerous throws. I mean, he throws the ball through triple coverage, which you can do on the college level, but you can't do that on Sunday. He also is very slow moving his head away from the primary target, which was Colin McCord's problem at when he was at Ohio State. But Will Howard is winning. I think what's going to happen with Howard is, let's see what postseason game he participates in. People are going to fall in love with his arm strength. He's going to be one of those guys that at the combine or at the Shriner Senior Bowl throws the ball a country mile with speed, and people are going to be blown away. But you got to coach him to scan the field, to go through progressions, not to try and force the ball through double and triple coverage. Because if you watch a lot of those magnificent passes that were completions against Texas, those are going to be interceptions on Sunday.
Yeah, no question about it. I agree, and we'll have to see what he ends up doing and how he works at the combine. And you're right, people will fall in love with the arm. He's got good size, all that stuff. We'll have to see exactly where he falls out. And he is right now. He's going to the Senior Bowl, Tony. That's where he's committed to. So we'll see him there with Riley Leonard. We're going to see him there with Jackson Dart. So we'll see the two teams playing each other, national title game, kind of go up against each other. We'll preview that game in just a little bit. But first, let's hit Texas. I thought Quinn Ewers was pretty good, Tony. I thought it was one of his better games. He missed one or two throws that I think hurt them. But overall, I think he has to be pretty happy with how he played, and then we'll see what he ends up doing.
Very efficient, brought Texas back, kept them in the game. Didn't make mistakes. I mean, it's not his fault that he was getting beat up, and he stayed in there and he competed. Again, it was a good performance. It wasn't a great performance. I never had Quinn Ewers as a potential top 10 pick, as people were talking about. It's going to be interesting to see what his next move is. I expect him to enter the NFL draft. I think his time at Texas is basically run out. I don't know that he's really going to improve by going back for another year, especially now that some of his players are leaving for the NFL. He's got a lot of upside. It may be a situation where he just needs a real good quarterback coach and needs to get somebody between his ears, to set him right. But he's got tremendous ability.
All right, Tony, let's stick on the offensive side of the ball. We'll talk about the two big offensive linemen. And I keep looking at some of these new mock drafts that come out, and every one of them I've seen Kelvin Banks is like a top 5 or 6 player. And I rewatched him a lot at the end of last week just to kind of refamiliarize myself off of what I looked at him last summer. And he just doesn't move like an NFL offensive tackle to me. And I think we've seen, and we saw it again in this game, and we could talk about Cam Williams too, I think also struggled. When he has to go up against hyper-athletic guys and Ohio State, I know Jack Sawyer and Tuamalu aren't, it's not Abdul Carter out there in terms of athleticism. But when we see him against those really athletic guys, I think we see some of those issues pop up.
Now, he has been struggling with an injury since the second half of the season. So I think Kelvin Banks, there's a story of Kelvin Banks for the first half of the season where he looked like a definite top 15 pick, and the second half of the season where he had an injury and he struggled. But still, what concerns me is the balance. He seems to be all over the place. He can't finish blocks. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? He's on my guard board right now. I think in my latest mock draft, I had him going in the teens. I don't see him as a top 10 offensive tackle. I mean, the only offensive tackle I think could go top 10 is Will Campbell of LSU, and I think he's my 11th rated player.
Tony, by the way, I think you have an offshoot of the Ohio State left tackle that got hurt. I think he's got I think team might fall in love with him and pick him in the top 12. Who knows?
I think if Josh Simmons had stayed healthy all season, I think Josh Simmons, and I even said that in the recent mock draft I did at Sportskeeda, would have been the first offensive tackle selected in this draft because his game was improving. I mean, he was good in 2023. He showed a lot of improvement in 2024. Unfortunately, there's that injury. But, it could be that they redshirted him with Josh Simmons. But getting back to Kelvin Banks, it's a tale of two seasons. And I think teams got to decide which Kelvin Banks are they getting and what position are they playing him at.
Yeah, I'm with you. And then Cam Williams, you were not impressed.
How could you be? I mean, Cam Williams, people have been feeling he's a first-round pick. He's a first-round pick. They love his size. But I think the size is almost a detriment because you watched him against Jack Sawyer. That scoop and score, I mean, he was almost bent over in half trying to stop Jack Sawyer. You can't bend at the waist the way Cameron Williams did and be an effective blocker. And it wasn't just that play. I mean, Jack Sawyer basically had his way with Cam Williams most of that game. Yeah, he's big. Yeah, he's strong, and he can drive defenders off the ball for the running game. But he's also immobile. He's heavy on his feet. He struggles to adjust. He doesn't show the great blocking balance. People get infatuated because he's 6'7", 360 pounds. Evan Neal has struggled. There's a point where you are too big for the NFL, and if you can't control that weight and play at that weight with good athleticism, it's going to be a detriment. And that's what I see with Cam Williams. I never saw him as a first-round prospect. I would be shocked at this point in time if he goes in the first round.
Yeah, I'm going to throw Emory Jones in that group too, by the way. The other offensive tackle for LSU, right? People talk about Campbell, and I think his tape, is good. I watched Jones late last week, Tony, and he's like all over the place. People love his potential and everything. To me, he is a day two guy. Maybe third round for me. I know a lot of other people like him as a first round pick. I only bring it up
as I did coming into the year. Scouts did. I mean, scouts
right.
had Emory Jones graded right below Will Campbell. They were neck and neck coming into the season.
But not anymore, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
No. All right, so let's go defense for Texas, Tony. What guys jumped out at you?
I thought Jahdae Barron did a solid job. I really didn't get beat. I thought Andrew Makuba, the Clemson transfer, who we really haven't talked about, also had a real solid game. Vernon Broughton and Baron Sowell, two guys we've spoken about in the past, I thought they also played well. I mean, the Texas defense didn't play bad in this game by any means. It's just that the Ohio State defense really stole the show.
No question about it. All right, let's preview it. We got our national championship game, Tony. Ohio State and Notre Dame, believe it or not. I know what Ohio State was the 8th seed, and what was Notre Dame, like 6, something like that?
I believe, yeah.
So clearly those rankings in the playoffs really turned out to be right on the money. Good job, guys. But I mean, look, unless something really weird happens in this game, Tony, I have a hard time finding a scenario where Notre Dame figures out a way to win this thing. Ohio State is going to stack the box. They're not going to let Love and the Notre Dame running backs run the football. They're going to make Notre Dame's passing game beat them through the air. And as much as we've seen these Ohio State cornerbacks be up and down this year, they're just better athletes than who the perimeter players are for Notre Dame. I don't see how Notre Dame's scoring. Like, how is Notre Dame scoring more than 14 points in this game unless they get like a pick six or special teams touchdown? I just think it's going to be a real struggle for them on offense.
Defense as well. I mean, every single matchup in this game favors Ohio State. I want to see somebody show me one matchup that favors Notre Dame. But the fact of the matter is, just about every matchup favored Georgia, and Notre Dame won the game. Just about every matchup favored Penn State, and Notre Dame won the game. I mean, if you were to give a title to this game, it would be momentum versus magic. Ohio State's got the momentum. Notre Dame's got the magic. So does Ohio State keep that momentum going, or does the clock strike 12 on Cinderella, or does Notre Dame just continue to find more magic? I mean, I see no matchup here, either when Ohio State's got the ball, whether it's either the receivers against the Notre Dame secondary, whether it's the running game against the Notre Dame front defensive seven, or when Notre Dame's got the ball, they're now playing with a backup left tackle who didn't play badly when he came in the game against Penn State. There's no matchup here that favors Penn State. I think what Penn State's got to do, and as you said, I mean, you look at Ohio State, how many first and second for day one and day two players they're going to be putting on the field on both sides of the ball compared to barely a scarce full, a single-digit few that Notre Dame's going to be putting on the field, both offense and defense. I think, Notre Dame, they're going to have to disguise a lot of their coverages on defense and try and fool Will Howard. They're going to have to run a lot of twists and stunts. We talked about the Notre Dame tight end, Mitchell Evans. They leave him on the line of scrimmage. Is he going to be more than a 3-yard target because they're going to need him to block? This game should be lopsided in Ohio State's favor, but then Ohio State should have really beaten Michigan and they didn't. So you never know. That's why they played the game.
Yeah, what a weird year for Ohio State. Like they're all ready to run Ryan Day out of town, and then like a
Yeah,
month, 2 months later, he's winning the national championship. I
yeah,
know. Trust me, there's a bunch of Ohio State fans in this building that
yeah.
were thinking the same thing, Tony. It's just a really, really weird year now with the system where in the history of college football, you lose. To a team like Michigan in your conference, your season's over, and now all of
Yeah.
a sudden you can do that and still win the national championship.
Well, that's why, Ryan Day should pray to the college football gods that the college football playoffs started in 2025. The expanded 12 team
Yeah.
playoffs started in 2025. Because if it started in 2026, he's probably on the unemployment line right now because there is no college football playoffs. And a little personal note, my daughter goes to Ohio State. She's a senior. So there's a very good chance that the Pauline family could leave Ohio State going 0-4 against Michigan, but winning a national title. So, I understand that.
I love it. All right, Tony. So next week, just so fans understand, we are going to have a show on Tuesday because the national championship game is Monday night, correct? So we'll do a show on Tuesday reacting to that. And believe it or not, this stuff happens so late now, Tony. That's to be our Shrine and Senior Bowl preview too. So
Yeah.
we're gonna put all that in one show. It's probably gonna be a bit of a mega show. Maybe we'll split it into two. We'll do one. We'll do like the reaction game early. We'll put the second one later in the week. I'll figure that out. The like logistics of it. But it's gonna be a busy show tomorrow, and like we're gonna blink. The playoffs are over. We have a national championship, and we're off to
Yeah.
Frisco, and we're off to Mobile. Go check out the interview with Eric Galco last week. By the way, if you folks haven't checked that out, he talked a lot about the guys going to Shrine. But we're into it now, man. Like we're in.
It's funny because you mentioned that. We got the national championship game, then we leave for Frisco, and it's basically 6 days of two-a-day practice, back-to-back Shrine and Senior Bowl, as well as the interviews and all the news gathering and everything. So, yeah, there's going to be no time to breathe after that championship game on Monday night.
Yeah, and then when we get back, it's less than a month from the start of the NFL Combine, and then you got, free agency, and then you got a month till the draft. So it's gonna come fast and furious here, Tony. Anything on Sportskeeda that the folks should be keeping an eye on?
Well, we've had some breaking news as far as the coaching ranks are concerned. Had the mock draft last week, and I'm going to save the next mock draft until after Senior Bowl practice because of whatever potential movement could be there. Plus, we'll have a better view on which underclassmen will be entering the draft, as well as the team mocks. I go division by division. I go 5 round deeps. I think 3 divisions have been put up. So by the end of this week, we'll have the rest of the division team mocks up.
So I didn't ask you to have this ready. So if it takes you a second to find it, I apologize ahead of time. Who was your top 10 in your mock that you put up last week?
Well, you know what? Let me pull it up. You kind of caught me by surprise there,
No,
but
I know I did. That's my fault.
give me a second. I
I
will.
want to see you, Tony. Now, folks, keep in mind, they're not through free agency yet. Team needs are
Yeah,
not known as of yet. This is just Tony taking the best players and trying to assign them to
yeah.
teams that seem to make sense now. So don't take mock drafts as early too seriously. But, Tony, who was your top 10?
Here we go. Tennessee Titans. I had him taking Shador Sanders. The Will Levis era is over. I made Giant fans happy. I had the Cleveland Browns taking Travis Hunter, but this was before the news that Deshaun Watson re-injured that Achilles. I had the Giants taking Cam Ward with the 3rd pick. I had the New England Patriots taking Tet McMillan of Arizona with that 4th selection. I know people think McMillan's going to go later, but he's a game-breaking receiver. They got a young quarterback there in Drake May, and there's no left tackle worthy of the 4th pick. I had the Jacksonville Jaguars taking Will Johnson with that 1st pick.
Over Carter, huh? Wow.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, this is you look at the draft. We have to see who's going to be coaching the Jaguars, but you look at the draft capital that the Jaguars have expended on pass rushers the
That's
past
true.
5 to 6 years. At some point in time, the kid from Georgia with the first pick of the draft a couple of years ago. At some point in time, you got to go with what you got and stop the bleeding, because you just end up creating holes in other areas.
No, it makes sense.
I think with the Raiders, I had the Raiders taking Abdul Carter. The Jets, I had taking Mason Graham.
Oh man, dude! By the way, Abdul Carter with Mason Crosby. Oh man,
Max
look
Crosby,
out!
yeah.
And Christian Wilkins. Oh man, what a defensive line. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Especially if they get the right coach in there. The Jets, I had taking Mason Graham because Will Johnson was off the board. There's no top receiver there. Carolina Panthers, I have them taking Jalen Walker. I think that's a perfect fit for that system. New Orleans Saints, Luther Burden, maybe a little bit early, but he's a playmaker and they need depth at receiver. Chicago Bears, I had him taking Will Campbell. You better protect Caleb Williams. You can't go down the Justin Fields route again and waste such an early pick on a talented first-round quarterback, first pick of the draft, first quarterback that was the first pick of the draft. So I had Campbell going 10-2 the Bears.
I see you managed to sneak one offensive lineman in there, Tony. Was there anyone that you really regretted leaving out of that top 10, do you feel like? Or was it tough finding 10 players to get into the top 10?
No, I mean, I would have liked to put Ashton Jeanty in the top 10 because I think he's probably a top 6 player in this draft, but there was just no real fit for him to be there.
Would you have everyone else? Dallas?
I had him go to Dallas at 12, exactly. Michael Williams, kind of up and down. No, I mean, a lot of people have Malachi Starks. I had him go 14 to Indianapolis, although I have him rated higher. I mean, we'll see what happens with Jalen Milroe. I have him going early. I have him going, 18 to Seattle. I mean, a lot of people outside the league are talking about him being a much earlier pick. I would be happy with that sentimentally because really since the first show of the year, I've talked about my love for Jalen Milroe. We'll see what happens. Also going to be interesting to see if Jalen Milroe happens to show up at the Senior Bowl. I think that would be a positive move for him.
Oh yeah, I mean if he didn't, that would be really silly. As a guy that's trying to prove something here and move up, I think he'd be very wise to show up at that game. And you're going to see him side by side with these other non-top 2 quarterbacks. You're going to see him right next to him. So I think it's a good situation for all those guys to kind of prove themselves. Tony, this was great, man. I appreciate the time as always.
We'll speak with you next week, John.
Yeah, next Tuesday, folks. Make sure you check out our next show right here on Draft Season, brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds that turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moodys.com. For Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda, I'm John Schmeelk. We'll see you next time on Draft Season.